Terrell Thomas, These Urban Times, and I'm sitting down with a gentleman who I respect so much. I love to hear his thoughts in the NBA world, for certainly the Philadelphia 76ers, where he is a beat writer for the Philadelphia Inquirer. It's great to read your stories online when I see them or on Instagram. You give us great information about the Philadelphia 76ers and the NBA overall. But the Sixers have advanced to the second round, so it was only right as we have a matchup of the Philadelphia 76ers versus the Atlanta Hawks that I speak with Mr. Keith Pompey. Keith, how you doing today, sir?
I'm doing well, man. But before we start, as soon as both of the teams matched up, I thought of you. I thought of you.
That's love, and that's great to hear, man. And it's funny because I thought of you, and I said, wow, well, my guy will be coming to town. It'll be great to speak with him. But before we get started and start talking about the Hawks and the Sixers, what were your thoughts on the Sixers' overall performance against the Wizards in their first round matchup?
You know, I thought it was good. It was impressive. I mean, before Joel Embiid was injured, I mean, he was just straight dominating to a point where, you know, they were calling him. They were saying he was doing stuff people haven't seen since Akeem Olajuwon. And then other people saying he reminds me of Patrick Ewing and Kevin McHale. So, you know, he was terrific, man. I think he had like 36 points the last game in like 26 minutes. It was ridiculous. It was just crazy, man. So the impression of them, they're big, they're strong, they're powerful, you know, but when he got hurt, you saw a little chink in the armor, so to speak. So we'll see what they can do.
Yeah, that'll be something to monitor, as you just mentioned, the injury in which Joel Embiid did suffer in the first round. Still not known if he'll definitely be out for game one, but it's not looking promising that we will see him on the court for game one. So we will continue to monitor that and, you know, get the information from you as soon as it drops. But the series is set now, Sunday at 1 o'clock. We'll have the Philadelphia 76ers, the number 1 seed in the Eastern Conference, hosting the number 5 seed Atlanta Hawks at the Wells Fargo Center, 1 o'clock on ABC. It will be a different matchup because we do not know yet how the Sixers lineup will look, if Embiid will be out there or if not, if he is out there, if he'll be on a minute restriction or if not. I do think the teams match up pretty well with Embiid out there on the floor. Outside of talent-wise, that the Sixers have a lot of strength, as you mentioned a moment ago. They are pretty big on the inside and on the outside with players like Harris and Simmons. But what are your thoughts initially as we go into Sunday, go into game one with the Sixers versus Hawks series?
You know, I think this series is going to be a little bit tougher than what people think. You know, I think you look at the Sixers and you say they're the number 1 seed. You know, the Hawks, you know, they have a young team. The number 1 seed should easily handle them, right? But to me, you've been at a lot of these games, especially in Atlanta, where the Sixers came down there and the Hawks were struggling and the Sixers left with a loss. I mean, it just seemed like that was something that always happened. And when you have a guy like Trae Young and then Bogdanovich now, like, it's kind of tough to overlook this squad. You know what I'm saying? It's like, this is the matchup that you said you wanted, but they can destroy the party. They can crash the party for you. So to me, if I'm the Sixers, I'm a little bit like concerned. I'm confident that if as long as we do what we can win. But at the same time, you can't sleep on this team, man. You can't think about Brooklyn like the New York Knicks were. If you do that, you're gonna go home. I mean, and that's my opinion. That's my thoughts on this series.
I really think that was very well said. I mean, you were right. I do have an eye on both of these teams, especially being here in Atlanta. And I've been trying to tell some of our media peers all year long that these ain't the same old Hawks. You know, the Hawks that we've been accustomed to for years. This is not this team, especially, you know, since Nate McMillan is taking over. They are a different team. So I agree wholeheartedly. Like, they can't be slept on. That's, you know, they definitely can't be slept on. But the Sixers have been impressive all season long, as you mentioned, especially being able to capture that 1 seed in a conference that has a team like Brooklyn, who is so many expected the Nets to capture that 1 seed. Speak to me, please, especially with your expertise and inside information about how impactful Doc Rivers has been to this Sixers lineup, because there have been a few additions, and I'm going to talk to you about them momentarily. But overall, still the same core when you think of Simmons, Harris, and Embiid, but it seems like a different Sixer team out there.
You're exactly right. Now, here's the thing. This is the biggest impact Doc Rivers had. all the years that they used to come down to Atlanta, and when you came home to come see them play, all your buddies and people were saying Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid can't play together. They
Mhm.
got to get rid of one of them. They got to get rid of one of them. Well, this year they're playing together well. Like, I mean, dude, they're like communicating and getting along. I mean, it's kind of like, it's just a great combination. And it's because of Doc Rivers. Like, he's the person that fused them together. So I say that's the biggest impact. Secondly, they're a little bit more accountable. You know what I mean? With everyone, it's kind of like guys know their roles. Like last year, you would talk to the players and be like, "Yo, man, what's your role?" I don't know. Can you ask coach? Stuff like that. But with Doc, it's kind of like everyone knows what it is. He came in from day one, told them this is what y'all going to do. Some of them didn't like it, but they respected the fact that this guy told them. So to me, those are the two biggest impacts. But then you can also add he's a former player. He was an NBA champion. He's 10th all times and wins. So he has that resume and that cachet that these guys are like, yo, this guy is the real deal. So, but biggest thing to me is bringing Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid together.
Doc Rivers' impact on the floor has certainly been obvious. But another gentleman I believe we need to tip our cap to kind of sits in the suites or in the front office, and that being Daryl Morey. He was able to bring some key additions over to this Sixer team with Seth Curry, the shooting in which he's added, Danny Green, Dwight Howard, and drafting a gentleman I think that Philadelphians are loving right now with Maxey, the rookie in Philadelphia. Talk to me about these additions in Curry, and in Green, Howard, and in Maxey, and just how pivotal they've been to the Sixers' success this season.
Yeah, they were all great additions. I mean, you look at it, the biggest thing is more so than, let's just say, playing on these guys on the court. It's kind of like what he did is making these moves that shored up the future because he got rid of some unwanted salaries. But at the same time, when you look at the Sixers' most successful regular season in the modern era, it was because they had shooters. Well, with Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons, it's because they had shooters around, right? So what you do is you go out there, you get Danny Green, and you go out and you get Seth Curry. And right now, the spacing is phenomenal for these two. They could be on the floor together. No one's complaining. And so I think that helps Joel, that helps Ben, but it gives like Joel that JJ Redick effect. Like when he had JJ Redick, they could do the two-man game. He can do that with Seth Curry. And also another thing is a guy like Danny Green, he won 3 rings. So with him being able to win these championships, when he says something kind of sort of like Doc, they listen because it's like, dude, you won chips, and so he can get on people. Now, Maxey, if there was a problem that the Sixers didn't have or a weakness, they didn't have anybody who could come in off the bench or who can create their own shot. Like you had Shake Milton, he did it a little bit, but you didn't have somebody that was real quick, could blow past people, go by people, and do whatever they want. That's Maxey. Now he doesn't always make the shot, but he's always getting to the basket, getting to the cup, wreaking havoc, and he's a big game player. So you are right. Those three guys are all great additions to the team, as is Dwight Howard, the backup center.
Now, what are your thoughts of our young Hawks team down here? And more specifically, what have your thoughts been since the shift, or I'll say since Nate McMillan has taken over? Because excuse me and forgive me because my numbers may be off slightly, but the Sixers have had an identical win-loss record from the time Nate McMillan has taken over and to the playoffs. I believe it was something like 31-12 or 32 and somewhere in that vicinity. So they have for certainly been two of the best teams in the NBA since the All-Star break. We can for certainly say that. What have your thoughts been on the Hawks since Nate McMillan has taken over?
Initially at first I was like, dang, why they do my man like that? Like,
Yeah.
why did they get rid of Lloyd? I was like, yo, what's up? What's up? And then all of a sudden they just start reeling off wins. And you're like, okay, all right. And then you're saying to yourself, man, Indiana was stupid for getting rid of Nate, like Nate's coach. But you look at it now, and like you said, like, I mean, they've been one of the most impressive teams in the NBA since he's been there, right? I mean, his team was struggling, one of the most impressive teams. I think that, they're a tough out. Like I said before, you can't sleep on them. I mean, they have great young talent. great young talent. They got a bunch of shooters. They're athletic. They like running, and they play with a lot of grit. It's like a team that a lot of people aren't talking about it because they're the Atlanta Hawks and they're thinking about the old Atlanta Hawks. But a team that they're a team that doesn't back down, and they seem to me like a squad that is excited to go into Philly. You know what I mean? They want the people to boom. They want somebody to bump into them. You know what I mean? They have chips on their shoulders, and that's what I think about the Hawks. Like before, you say to yourself, "I'm gonna stop Trae. I'm gonna try to dunk on John. You know, get physical with him, do all that." Well, okay, well you can try to do that, but at the same time, they got other people coming now. Like, you know what I mean? The young boys got older, man, and they're better. So when I look at this team, I don't think this team gets the credit that it deserves, you know, because they're young. But I think that, you know, if you're not careful, they're gonna beat you.
Terrell Thomas, These Urban Times, once again sitting down with Sixers beat writer and overall NBA reporter Keith Pompey. Keith, I'm not going to take up too much more of your time, but it's only right with us speaking on the Sixers and Hawks that we do look at the other matchup in the Eastern Conference, being Brooklyn and Milwaukee. That's a matchup filled with stars on both sides of the ball. What are your thoughts on that matchup as we'll get to see KD and Giannis, possibly Drew Holiday and Kyrie, Chris Middleton and James Harden? Tough matchups all over the floor right there.
Yeah, that's a tough one because, you know, it's one of those things where we haven't seen both of these teams at 100% play facing each other. You know what I mean? But I think at the end of the day, I think Brooklyn is going to pull it out. I mean, I think it could go 7 games, but I think like games like that, it comes down to, have you done it before in the biggest stage, on the big stage? And I don't know anybody on that Milwaukee team who has. And when I look at Kevin Durant, you know, an MVP final, I mean MVP, a Finals MVP. You look at Kyrie, who, you know, LeBron got the credit for winning the championship with Cleveland, but it was Kyrie who sank the winning shot, right? So I'm looking at these two guys, and I just think their championship pedigree is going to propel them, and it's going to be a good series. But I think at the end of the day, having those two guys and you having a bunch of guys who like lost in these critical moments, I think it's going to bode well for Brooklyn in the end.
This will be the first time since 2010 that we will not see Stephen Curry or LeBron James in the NBA Finals. There'll be some new players, some new rising stars who will get a chance to really shine on the big stage. And once you mentioned Devin Booker, Donovan Mitchell's, we'll see the Joker out in Denver. Sucks that he won't have Jamal Murray with him, so that, you know, more people can see how talented that young brother is. But what are your thoughts moving forward on who we could possibly see in the NBA Finals?
You know what? I think it's going to be Brooklyn, and I think it could be Denver.
Hmm.
I mean, I do. I just think that, you know, right now in the West, I don't think that they have anybody who can match up with the Joker. You know what I mean? I know, like, people say, what about Phoenix, this and that. I just don't see anybody matching up with the Joker. And it's not just the Joker. Like, I know, you know, they lost their point guard, right? But Michael Porter Jr. is a bad dude. That dude is crazy. You know what I mean? Like, yo, I mean, think about it. I mean, people got fired for not drafting the dude. You know what I mean? So
I'm
I,
glad you
I, I
said that.
just think,
Yes.
you know what I mean? So I don't know, man. I just think that's a little bit too much smoke, and especially when you have to go to Denver with that altitude. Yeah, so I just see them coming out. I think it's going to be them in Brooklyn.
Keith, man, thank you so much for your time. Who you got game one? I'm not gonna ask you for your overall predictions right now because we do got it. Embiid, that's gonna be very key to how this series goes. His his health status, and everything like that. But game one in Philadelphia, we know you'll be there. I'll be looking forward to seeing what you have to say live from the Wells Fargo Center. But what are your predictions? Do the Sixers take game one, or does the road team Atlanta Hawks come in and steal game one?
I think the Sixers take it. I do, and I'm assuming that I'm thinking that Embiid's going to play. I
Okay.
think that they do that. But I mean, just because it's going to be what 15,000 people is going to be electric, you know what I mean? But I do think that game two, like it's going to be the Hawks are going to love being the villain in game 2. So anything can happen there. But I do think with the excitement, I think the Sixers do get game 1.
Keith, thank you so much for your time. It's always a pleasure to sit and talk with you. One of the greatest minds in NBA that I know. It's great once again to get your coverage. We're looking forward to when you get down here to Atlanta. But see you Sunday in the press rooms. Keep doing what you're doing. Please let our audience know how they can check you out via social media so they can also stay in tune to your wonderful reporting.
All right, you can follow me on Twitter at Pompey on Sixers. And you can also listen to my blog. It's called Locked On 76ers. And you can go to Inquirer.com to read my stuff.
Thank you, man. See you soon.